Open a 1960s New York City classroom and you'd find a world that would horrify modern parents. Not because the education was worse, but because the lessons themselves, the methods used, the daily realities accepted as normal would send today's parents running to the school board. Duck and cover drills. Every New York City schoolchild in the 1960s knew Bert the Turtle. When Bert saw a flash, he ducked and covered, and so did they. At least twice a month, sirens would wail through PS 118 in Queens or Junior High 82 in the Bronx. Teachers would shout, "Cover!" and hundreds of children would drop to their knees, crawl under wooden desks, and cover their heads. They were practicing survival for nuclear war. "Your desk will save you from the blast," they said. Even 8-year-olds knew this was ridiculous, but they practiced anyway. Teachers explained radiation poisoning in age-inappropriate detail. Children had nightmares about mushroom clouds over the Empire State Building. This wasn't occasional. This was constant, integrated into education as thoroughly as spelling tests. Paddling and corporal punishment. Walk into any 1960s New York principal's office with a discipline problem and you'd meet the paddle. A thick wooden board, sometimes with holes drilled for maximum impact. Talking back to a teacher, fighting in the schoolyard. The punishment was standardized: bend over the desk and receive strikes hard enough to leave bruises. Girls got paddled too. Parents not only accepted this, they often requested it. Teachers carried rulers to crack across knuckles. Catholic schools had it worse. Nuns used metal-edged rulers that drew blood. Today, a teacher who laid hands on a student would face criminal charges. In 1960s New York, it was Tuesday. Rigid gender education. Boys took shop. Girls took home economics. This wasn't a choice. It was mandatory. Boys learned metalwork and woodworking. These were the skills of men. You'll need these to support a family. Girls learned to sew, cook, and keep house. They practiced setting tables and studied nutrition for feeding husbands and children. The message was explicit. Boys would be breadwinners. Girls would be homemakers. Guidance counselors steered bright girls toward teaching or nursing only. Boys who showed interest in cooking faced mockery. Gender determined everything. Patriotic Indoctrination. Every morning, New York City schoolchildren stood beside their desks, placed hands over hearts, and recited the Pledge of Allegiance. Not optional, mandatory. Students who refused faced punishment. Social studies taught American exceptionalism without nuance. The United States won World War II single-handedly, textbooks claimed. Communism was evil. Teachers didn't present multiple perspectives. They taught unwavering patriotism and fear of communist infiltration. Some schools required essays about what they'd do if communists invaded New York. This wasn't history. This was indoctrination. Harsh academic tracking. By 8th grade, New York schools divided students into 3 rigid tracks: academic, commercial, and vocational. Once tracked, escape was nearly impossible. Vocational students never took algebra or foreign languages. Teachers openly told vocational students that college wasn't for them. These were life sentences delivered by 14. Kids from Harlem got pushed into vocational tracks regardless of intelligence. The system reproduced class structures and limited social mobility. Rote memorization over critical thinking. Sit in any 1960s classroom and you'd hear chanting. Multiplication tables recited in unison. State capitals memorized. Historical dates drilled endlessly. This was education. Memorization, repetition, regurgitation. A student who questioned the textbook faced ridicule. Creativity was discouraged. Original thinking was disruptive. The goal wasn't independent thinkers, it was obedient citizens who knew their multiplication tables. Modern education emphasizes critical thinking. In 1960s New York, education meant sitting silently and never asking why. Segregated special education. Children with learning disabilities didn't attend regular classes. They went to special schools or got warehoused in basement classrooms. The separation was complete and permanent. Down syndrome children attended separate facilities. Kids with dyslexia got called stupid and failed repeatedly. If you couldn't keep up, you disappeared from regular classrooms. Teachers received zero training in learning differences. The assumption, some kids were normal, others were defective. Modern law guarantees appropriate education for all. In 1960s New York, different meant discarded. Smoking sections and health ignorance. High schools had designated smoking areas for students, official school policy. Teenagers smoked between classes. Nobody wore seatbelts on school buses. Asbestos-wrapped pipes. Lead paint covered walls. Physical education meant public humiliation. Overweight kids got mocked by teachers during weigh-ins. Health education avoided any mention of sex. Nobody discussed mental health. Depression meant toughen up. School nurses handed out aspirin and sent kids back to class. The strap in Catholic schools. Public schools had paddles. Catholic schools had the strap, a thick leather belt, sometimes with metal studs. Students extended their hands, palm up, and received strikes hard enough to raise welts. The beatings happened in front of entire classes. Nuns called students stupid, worthless, headed for hell. Parents paid tuition for this strict discipline. Nobody reported abuse because it wasn't considered abuse. It was education. Mandatory shop skills for boys. Every boy spent hours each week in shop class, mandatory. They learned to use table saws, drill presses, welding torches. Injuries were common. Fingers got smashed, hands got burned. The curriculum prepared working-class kids for working-class futures. Nobody discussed whether students had interest. You were male, therefore you took shop. Boys who wanted cooking or art faced intense pressure. The system reproduced existing social structures. So, what changed? How did we go from schools where teachers hit children, where nuclear war drills traumatized students, where girls learned cooking because biology determined destiny, to modern schools where such things would cause instant termination? Research changed things. Child psychology demonstrated corporal punishment caused harm. The Cold War ended. Feminism challenged gender-segregated education. Special education law recognized all children deserve instruction. But mostly, society decided that children were people deserving respect rather than small adults who needed to be beaten into submission. 1960s education reflected values we've thankfully left behind. Today's parents complain about Common Core math or mask mandates. Their grandparents sent kids to schools where getting hit by teachers was standard and preparing for nuclear annihilation was part of the curriculum. That's actual shocking education.